Hey, everybody. On today's Locked On Bama, we're going to talk about Jimmy's predictions for the SEC next year. He's already put that out, and he's got some interesting picks. We'll talk about that. Oh, yeah. And Agiye Hall may finally be off the team, or is he not? We'll be talking about that and more on today's Locked On Bama.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. One of those extremely hectic days. I think you're traveling, which makes it hectic, and you're like in a hotel in the Midwest, so I shouldn't complain, but busy day.
I'm just outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. I will be here tomorrow, too, and then we'll just see where the winds will take Luke Robinson after that.
You went to Indianapolis in a sailboat?
I did. It's just really there's nothing I can't do. Jimmy, speaking of winds taking things places, I think that Agiye Hall has caught the breeze and sailed right out of Tuscaloosa.
It went just that smoothly.
I mean, frankly, look, let me go ahead and say this. We're not here to bash anybody at all. And Agiye Hall, man, more power to you. I hope you go somewhere and kick butt and do your thing. And it would be great if you ended up with an Alvin Kamara-like resurgence, like a phoenix rising. That would be fantastic. But you know what? I don't see it happening until he has a major change in attitude. Even when it was reported by a couple of reputable sources that, hey, Agiye Hall's not on the roster, and then he was actually not on the roster. Agiye Hall later came out and tweeted, "Hey, this is news to me." If it is, then I mean, things are worse than I thought. I mean, so anyway, Jimmy, look, I'm not saying good riddance. I won't say that because I am pulling for the kid. I want him to do well. I truly mean that. At the same time, I think this is addition by subtraction.
Yeah, at the time of our recording, I'm not sure how to best phrase it. This is what we know. It's been reported by highly credible, reputable sources, citing sources from within the program, that his removal from the roster was not a mistake or an omission. He was taken off the roster. That's what we know. Then Agiye tweeted that this was all news to him. I think I'm being fair when I'm saying that the media in this instance is a more credible. We should believe what the media said, but only what they said. I don't recall anyone saying specifically he's been kicked off the team. He's been ejected. All they reported was he's removed from the roster. I don't know what that means. To me, it means he's off the team. Maybe it means suspension, but we've suspended other kids in the past and not removed them from the roster. So I don't know what's up. I just think this is the only thing that I would say from a guesstimate or an opinion is, if you are holding a lot of Agiye Hall is going to do great things at Alabama stock, you're going broke.
Broke. No, I'm right there with you. That I think it's fair to say one way or the other, no matter if this is a mistake, which would be the most coincidental thing that has ever happened since what was that joke in The Sopranos when is so tired. It wasn't in The Sopranos, but I know Michael Imperiale, Christopher said it. He said, "Could you believe Lou Gehrig got Lou Gehrig's disease? What are the odds?" I mean, that's sort of like, can you believe Agiye Hall is the one guy left off the roster? What are the odds? I mean, it wasn't a mistake.
He was removed from the roster by athletic department officials based on an order from the football program. Now, does that mean he's forever off the team or suspended? We don't know that. I'm just sort of ignoring Agiye's tweet because I'm not sure Agiye is super credible, if that makes sense. So I don't know what's happening. I just know this. If you're asking me who the starting receivers are this fall, I'm not including Agiye for just using today as an example of why I'm not. I just don't think we can count on him.
things are bad when you aren't the most credible source on things involving you. You're like, oh, and secondly, I think to your point, Triandus Luke has a better chance of reemerging as the starter in the slot this year than Agiye Hall being a starting wide receiver.
Pretty good.
And again, I'm not saying good riddance. I don't want anybody to think I'm saying that. I mean, I'm
I hope
for
it
it.
works out for him. I hope it works out for him.
Hey,
and if it's somewhere else, that's fine.
You know what? I still like Alvin Kamara. I really do. And but I mean, I also do say, man, I wish Alvin Kamara had stuck around. That would have been super cool, right? But at the time, it just couldn't happen. So, all right, Jimmy, let's go ahead and tell everybody about Built Bar. Look, I'm on the road. I'm taking some Built Bars with me because when you go on the road and you're just prone to eat badly. I mean, that's just what I normally do. So I brought Built Bars with me to sort of satisfy me. And that's what they do. You can talk about Snickers all you want to. Built Bar actually satisfies and keeps you skinny. That's a positive thing, or helps you lose weight if that's the route you want to go. If you tried their puffs, they're fantastic. They're a fan favorite. They've got all these incredible flavors like cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're all so good. Go try them out. You're going to love them. Built Bars are all covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, even the puffs, 100% real chocolate. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off of that order at built.com. That's promo code LOCKED15 at built.com. These things are delicious, nutritious, and scrumptious. You will love them. Go check them out. Jimmy and I highly approve Built Bars. Jimmy, I was just sort of perusing the internets.
Yep.
And on the site that you and I have written for forever, Crimson Country Club, you put out your pre-spring SEC predictions, which first of all is always a great sign because it means it's time to start talking football even more seriously. But we'll go over this in a second. One other thing that I want to throw out there, I know Auburn's got their A-Day this weekend, which I'm looking forward to watching it. I like to watch SEC spring games, so I'm going to watch that one. I'm not sure who else has their spring games coming up, but I'm glad to see they're sort of staggered. Michigan's already had theirs. So anyway, let's go over your East predictions.
Right.
You have no shocker. Actually, let's go the other way. I don't think there's going to be a shock in this whole list, actually. Way to go. Way to be controversial.
And it was kind of a rough draft. I'm not married to this just yet. I did put it out there to buddies. I was looking forward to feedback, hoping someone would change my mind, frankly. So, if a listener comments and wants to change I'm like, hey, this is how I'm thinking. Somebody change my mind. It's sort of my thought process right now.
All right, we're not going to spend a ton of time on the ones in the lower echelon, especially of the East, where Vandy, Vandy 7, Missouri number 6, Kentucky number 5, and South Kakalaki number 4. I think it's interesting, moderately interesting. You have South Carolina over Kentucky, but
right.
Hey, do what you want to there. Then you got Florida number 3. You say that people are underestimating their talent level. I think they may be overestimating it. And then, of course, you have Tennessee 2 and Georgia 1. Just wrap up the East really quickly because we're a Western Division podcast here.
Right. To me, it's a non-controversial that Georgia's 1. It's non-controversial to me that Missouri is 6 and Vanderbilt is 7. I think any sort of discussion has to do with how you order 2 through 5, how you order Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Florida. I think if you ask 4 people, you're going to get 4 different answers. I'm real curious to know how everybody else looks at those. I have South Carolina higher than some because in my mind, they've improved the most in the offseason. They won 7 games last year, won the bowl game, and then added Spencer Rattler, who for some reason has created some level of negativity about his game that I don't understand as somebody who watches a lot of quarterbacks. To me, Spencer Rattler is still very possibly a first-round pick in the draft. He hasn't gotten smaller with less of an arm and less of arm talent, and what he did accomplish at Oklahoma is really impressive. The fact that he lost his job to another first-round pick doesn't really mean anything to me. I just see South Carolina as, hey, they won 7 and they improved. Kentucky lost Wan'Dale Robinson. They lost some offensive linemen, their offensive line coach, some defenders. To me, Kentucky's just lost. I have a lot of confidence in Billy Napier. I think Napier's got enough for Napier to work with. That's what I mean by that Florida talent level. I don't think Florida has to have the second best team in the East to finish second, because I think Napier is going to maximize their potential. And of course, Tennessee, who I did put second primarily because of their offense and Hendon Hooker, but they do have to answer questions on defense. They were really bad last year.
And then, of course, Georgia won. What's funny about Georgia, they're saying Carson Beck is really tearing it up, and he may actually push Stetson Bennett for the starting role, which would be just kind of weird to me. I don't see that happening, but man, that would be a story.
I don't see it happening either, but I know this. When Carson Beck was in high school, he was either committed to Alabama or was close to committing to Alabama. I think he was committed to Alabama at one point.
He was.
I loved him. I thought his high school tape was outstanding, and I have been stunned that he hasn't been a thing at Georgia. So if the light is now coming on for him, I'm not surprised in the least.
All right, Jimmy, before we get into the West, just another recruiting nugget very quickly. Tyler Steen, the transfer from Vandy, we fully expect him to commit to Alabama, maybe even by the time we get this cut and published, right?
Yeah, that could happen today or tomorrow. Per Joseph Hastings had a special report last night on On3 that Steen could be close to making a public commitment. Hastings didn't say to Alabama, but let's just say there's a lot of optimism there.
Okay, and I think that's big. We had one of our listeners in the question segment or in the comment segment of the podcast on YouTube. Is that what you call it on YouTube? Is a podcast still? I don't know. Doesn't matter. They said, hey, very interested to know how the offensive line is coming along. And my answer to that would be, let me tell you once we get Tyler Steen on board, and then I'll feel a lot more confident. I feel pretty good about it anyway, just because we're living in Nick Saban's Alabama. But with Tyler Steen on board, I would feel a lot better about this offensive line.
Oh, absolutely. And don't get me wrong. When I say I feel so much better about it, I'm not saying that, well, we've got the Evan Neal replacement. We found Evan Neal, the sequel. It's not that. It's just that with Tyler Steen, we know what we're getting. We know that we're getting at minimum an adequate player. We know and he's experienced and mature, and he's blocked some of these very guys he's going to be asked to block again. And he's done it successfully in the past. So we know what we're getting, and that's a bigger certainty than hoping that our young tackles figure it out. So that's why I'd be like, wow, we sort of have a known. Look, Ekiyor's a known commodity. Cohen's a known commodity. Seth's a known commodity. Now you add Steen, he's a known commodity. Now you're just left with one spot, and you hope one of the young tackles, probably J.C. Latham, gets it and becomes a star player. He's certainly physically capable of that.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about the SEC West predictions and the overall national projections. But right now, I need to tell you about Rock Auto. This episode is actually brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain store to stock all the parts you need. They just don't have them. Why do you want to go there? Why endure the often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning like is your Odyssey an LX or an EX or a DX or a Triple X, whatever, but the Honda Triple X would actually be something I'd be down for. And wait for the person behind the counter as they order the parts from their computer. They don't really know what they're doing. You want to go to a place that knows what it's all about when it comes to your car, and that place is Rock Auto. Save time and money when choosing Rock Auto. Why do you want to spend more, like 30% more, 50% more, 100% more? Go to Rock Auto. They will save you that money. It's a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every single customer. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for your auto parts needs. Write Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box so they know you were sent by Luke and Jimmy. That's right, Locked On in that How'd You Hear About Us box. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Rock Auto. All right, Jimmy, SEC West time. And again, let's not really just go through, well, actually, going through the bottom feeders in this one actually could be fun. You have Auburn number 7. You say the least number of dudes in the West, and that means the least number of wins. I could not agree more. I think that, look, Auburn is always an enigma wrapped in a puzzle, right? So you don't really know. And so picking them first or last is always very dangerous because they're going to do the opposite. But this year, I think, man, nobody's been able to overtake TJ Finley yet in the spring. That's a problem because TJ Finley was not very good last year. Tank Bigsby is a weapon, but the offensive line is far from average, I would say. The defense is okay. They've got some players. I mean, I think Owen Papo, if he's healthy, is a really good player. But I don't know if they have any All-Americans on that list anymore. I mean, Roger McCreary's gone. So I could certainly see Auburn and LSU battling for last place, which is crazy to say.
Well, I mean, look where LSU finished last year. I mean, LSU finished dead last in the SEC West last year. It's not crazy to pick them last again. I mean, to not pick them last, you'd have to say LSU is hugely improved and everyone else regressed. And I don't think you could say that. As to Auburn, you know, I'm not being an Alabama homer here, and don't even compare them to Texas A&M or Georgia. I think it'd be fun to do this. Ask an Arkansas insider, someone who's really smart about what Arkansas has got on their roster. Ask them, how many guys do you want off Auburn? Look at Auburn's starting lineup. Who do you want out of their lineup to improve you? How many is Arkansas going to take? 5? 4? You might even say 10 or 11, but what would you have said 3 years ago? 17, 19? Auburn just doesn't have the number of dudes that everyone else in the West has, including LSU.
No, I'm right there with you. And I think that, you know, Auburn travels to Georgia. They travel to Alabama. And, you know, on the surface, that you would think that's a bad thing. But I would say that actually may help them in the sense that they're going to lose those games if you play them on the moon. So
those would have been home losses. If your certain losses are on the road, that's something to always look for. When you're looking at over-under and you want to make a wager on over-under win totals, look at that, people. Look at, hey, are your automatic losses on the road? Because that means you have winnable home games.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's the schedule is not god awful if you take Georgia and Alabama out, which is, I mean, you know, that's tough to do. But they do welcome Penn State to Auburn. Penn State's going to be okay. I don't think they're going to be fantastic. I think they'll be pretty good.
They'll be better than Auburn, but I was
surprised.
But I was surprised at that game last year. Big time surprise.
It should be a night game. Jordan Hare, you know, Auburn will be undefeated because they play 2 soup cans before that. And then I think they welcome in LSU or something like that in Missouri. So they got 5 straight home games to open up. So I think, you know, they could start out ball of fire and then crash and burn like they did this year. That's sort of my prediction. So
exactly. It'll look a lot like last year, but probably worse in the sense that they almost beat Alabama. And I think there's a good chance that game's not competitive this year.
So you've got LSU at 6, Ole Miss at 5, and Mississippi State at 4. I think if you threw Auburn in there, you could really mix all those 4 up. And if you told me you have Mississippi State last, I could buy it. If you told me you have LSU last, I could buy it. Whatever. I think all of those are sort of in the same boat. The next 3, of course, Arkansas, A&M, and Bama. I would really be prone to flip Bama and A&M if the game were at A&M again this year. I probably wouldn't do it because, number one, I'm a homer. Number 2, I do think Alabama has the better talent. I think it's very tough to beat Nick Saban twice in a row. But I think that A&M is going to be really, really good. The problem is they do travel to Alabama. And Alabama's, look, their crossover games this year are going to be a much tougher game at Tennessee. It's much tougher than it's been being. And then Vanderbilt. That Alabama just got the luck of the draw this year. So, I mean, kudos to them for getting that, but that's just the way it is. So I like that. And then you have Alabama beating Georgia and Atlanta, which I can certainly see that. Now, your playoff teams, and this is where I've got to take a lot of exception. Alabama and Ohio State, I get it. I'm with you.
It's going to be universal. I think it's going to be universal. Yeah.
Agreed. And then Oregon and A&M. Now, look, I can certainly see A&M in the sense that if you really believe their only loss is to Alabama,
which is what I believe today. Okay,
that makes some sense. I guess the one question would be quarterback. I know They get Haynes King back apparently, and he's supposed to be really good, but we don't know that he's really good yet. And they did lose at home to Mississippi State last year, a bad Mississippi State team. So, I just don't know that they're there yet. They're so young. And then Oregon, man, I just pulled up Oregon's schedule. Let me tell you something. They open up at Georgia, by the way. Well, it's in Atlanta, but it's essentially at Georgia.
Loss.
Yeah,
That's a loss.
and then they've also and they've got BYU at home. That's no gimme.
Tough game.
Let's see. They travel to Arizona, an Arizona team that'll be much improved, by the way, much improved. They travel to Colorado, who's not all right. They're not great, but they're not awful. And they welcome in Utah, who will be very tough and seasoned because they will have played Florida this year, by the way.
I almost went Utah. Went Utah, not Oregon. It's not so much a product of the schedule yet, so much as it was. Look, I had to pick. I don't think it's going to be Notre Dame. They play Ohio State, I think, and they'll lose that game, and that'll kind of put them out. I think people will be Notre Dame doubters if they lose to Ohio State. So that means for my fourth team, I was really confident about A&M finishing 11-1. To me, they're sort of like the third team. The fourth team to me was, who am I going to pick? The winner of the Pac-12, the winner of the Big 12, or the winner of the ACC? And I picked Oregon because I like them a centimeter more than I like Utah, a centimeter more than I like Oklahoma State or Oklahoma, and a centimeter more than who?
USC. Their schedule's pretty easy.
Really? They play Notre Dame. I mean, I could see them losing to Notre Dame.
Well,
I'm not. I agree that USC could be a thing. I agree, and I think Caleb Williams is likely to be their quarterback, and that's a plus. And I do think Lincoln Riley is a good coach. I would agree they're in the mix. But Oregon, USC, Utah, Clemson, Oklahoma State, I have a hard time distinguishing between any of those teams.
I'm just going to run down USC's schedule really quickly. This is Locked on Bama, but because this figures into the playoffs. First of all, they've got a nice quarterback coming in,
right?
Caleb Williams, right?
Right.
They're not. Their schedule is Rice, Stanford, Fresno State, Oregon State, Arizona State, Washington State, Utah. Now that's at Utah, but at Arizona, California, Colorado, Notre Dame is at USC to end the season, and at UCLA. So, and then of course assuming the Pac-12 championship,
they got to beat Utah and Notre Dame. Utah and Notre Dame. I'm not saying they lose both, but those will be challenges for sure. And to say nothing of a Pac-12 championship game against presumably Oregon.
But the tiebreaker for me would be Oregon is probably going to go with that Thompson kid, who's, at least it looks like it. Beau Nix is running second according to the reports right now.
Right.
But even if
this
go
is my
with Beau
understanding
Nix,
about that, by the way, I'm not saying Beau Nix is second. He's not going to be the quarterback, or that he's. I don't know what's going to happen with the Oregon quarterback, but I asked around about why is Todd Thompson beating out Beau Nix, and the answer that I'm getting from Oregon insiders is that Ty was on the team at Oregon last year. Beau's going to have to beat him out. Beau's the new guy. Ty is returning. So Beau has to beat him out. I know that not everybody gets this, but that's hard to do during the week of practice. Beating out someone that's ahead of you generally takes place in scrimmages or games. You don't. Boy, Beau had a much better practice than Ty Thompson. He's number one now. That's not really how practice works.
And boy, if you want to see some people get fired up, Beau Nix at Oregon taking on Alabama in the playoff would be that's a storyline and a half. So I dig that a little bit more than a USC Alabama storyline. But anyway, Jimmy, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We will be back tomorrow with more information, probably maybe a commitment of a transfer, something like that. Who knows? We'll be talking about it here on Locked On Bama.
We'll throw in a free fun blurb. Hearing through sources indicate we are in good shape with Mark Sears, the point guard from Ohio University, who has an impressive offer list. But we're in good shape.
I like that a lot. All right, buddy. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.